We want to get you updated about Houston Mayor John Whitmire. He addressed the flooding tragedy and the part that Houston is ready to play in the recovery. And as you were just hearing from Williamson County, talking about Houston Fire and Galveston Fire Departments going and helping in doing assessments of homes and buildings and structures, that they have to check all of these to see if they're even safe, for people to be able to return to any of these things. So we're starting to hear more and more about Houston people going and stepping up to help out. But we want to check in and let you know about what the mayor had to say about Houston and how it's playing a role in the recovery. So here is Mayor Whitmire.
We're in constant contact with the State Emergency Center. We have Houston Fire on the scene. In fact, last night we sent additional resources. HPD is on call. Largely, we were advised that the federal government is pretty much taking over the rescue with the Coast Guard, the National Guard, and other agencies, but certainly we're a phone call away, and we're in constant touch with NIM Kidd, Freeman Martin, the director of DPS, so they know all of Houston's first responders are available. Certainly our dive teams, and there's a list of resources, but Chief Munoz, Chief Diaz, Brian Mason, all the emergency departments are in constant touch. Yeah, it's changing, Abby. When we get through here, I'll get you a count. But as of last night, I know Chief Munoz was sending additional resources. We're trying to, obviously, you can imagine the chaos, and they're trying to do it. It's an organization starting at the top in Austin. Of course, you have seen the presence of the federal government. So we'll get you. I don't want to not give you a current number, but as of late last night, HPD was asked just to be on standby because they thought they had adequate resources from first responders. It's the time that we need, but time is running short, as we all know. It's a very stressful. In fact, hell, they were warning about more floods today, so it's probably as bad a tragedy as I've seen in my 50-plus years of public service. It's a time for everyone to come together. Partisanship, where you live, your ethnicity, anything that people use to divide us needs to be condemned. We are Houstonians, we're Texans, we're human beings, and we're parents. As I said, I was really struggling Friday night. I was with my two daughters. My daughter was dropping off the 11-year oldest grandson yesterday at an East Texas camp. I'm living and watching the anxiety of families, but my family is very blessed, as most of us are. But as mayor of Houston, I want everybody to recognize that it's time to hug one another. Hug your kids. Now serving B. And don't let anybody divide us at this point in time. Shouldn't ever, but Lord, not during these days of suffering by so many families. And so the next few days we'll be monitoring things very carefully. Certainly any resources that the tragedy and the crisis needs out of Houston, we stand ready to serve. And I'll be talking to council and my team to see are there other steps we can take to assist the families that have lost so much. But right now, I think words matter, and let's be united on this suffering with other families.
Emotional plea there from our mayor, but also talking about how Houston is stepping up fire departments going out there. And as I was just mentioning before we went to that sound with him, Williamson County saying that the Houston Fire Department and Galveston Fire Departments are helping their teams to assess the homes and buildings there to find out what's safe, what's not, so that they can start to, try and normalize and let people go back home. We're going to take a break. We'll be back, though, with more coverage. I've got Melissa back here with me now, so we'll continue to bring you more coverage of the fallout and the devastation from the floods in Central Texas. We'll be back.
Welcome back. Melissa Wilson here now in our Fox 26 studio, just bringing you up to date with what's going on just the terrible flooding situation in the Texas Hill Country. Earlier, we brought you a news conference from Kerrville with Senator Ted Cruz, just talking about and addressing the lack of warning. Of course, all the finger pointing as to who's to blame. Let's listen in and just give you an excerpt of that.
I think this is not a time for partisan finger pointing and attacks. Now, after we come through search and rescue, after we come through the process of rebuilding, there will naturally be a period of retrospection where you look back and say, okay, what exactly transpired? What was the timeline? And what could have been done differently to prevent this loss of life? And that's a natural process. I think it should not happen in a bitter and partisan sense, but it should happen in a reasonable sense of saying, what lessons can we learn? And I will give an example. Houston's my hometown. If you live on the Gulf Coast, we get hurricanes. That's part of living on the Gulf Coast as hurricanes hit. And I do think Texas as a whole has learned over time how to deal more effectively with hurricanes. And so you look here, we know the National Weather Service put out an emergency warning just after 1 a.m. and a second emergency warning just after 4 a.m. Now, obviously, most people at 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. are asleep. And so I think we will have a reasonable conversation about, are there any ways to have earlier detection? And some of that, the limits of a flash flood, they're very difficult because they can arise so quickly. But everyone would agree in hindsight, if we could go back and do it again, we would evacuate particularly those in the most vulnerable areas, the young children in the cabins closest to the water. We would remove them and get them to higher ground if we could go back and do it again.
Hopefully so many lessons learned during these tragedies. And again, certainly not a time for finger pointing, but just figuring out what happened and how we can make sure it never happens to families again. And I know that hopefully things will change because of it and new warning systems will be put into place for the future. We do know that where he was in Kirk County, 75 victims were there. The one good thing that comes out of just horrific times is seeing the goodness of people, of locals doing everything they can, including our businesses right here in Houston, doing something about it, trying to help, trying to make a difference to all those people hurting in the Hill Country. One of those places is KP's Kitchen. Jade Fleury shows us what they're doing to help.
From food donations to emergency supplies, the Houston community is really rallying together to support those impacted by the unthinkable flooding in Kerrville. In KB's Kitchen, here is one of the many businesses and organizations that's contributing to the donation efforts. Both the Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys have each donated $500,000 to the Central Texas flood relief efforts. The Together for Texas Emergency Flood Donation Drive is also working with multiple organizations to collect donations that will be delivered to those impacted. And on Sunday, KP's Kitchen donated 100% of their proceeds to the victims and families impacted by the flooding.
This tragedy did happen, but everybody coming in united to be able to donate. It's amazing that there is kindness over there and generosity when people are in need.
For a full list of all the businesses and organizations that are contributing to the flood effort, go to fox26houston.com. Reporting from Bel Air, Jade Fleury, Fox 26 News.
As of now, 10 deaths are confirmed across Travis, Williamson, and Burnett counties. Jessica Rivera from our sister station in Austin reports from Leander this morning on that part of it all.
Hi, good morning, Heather. Yes, it is a devastating scene here in Leander. As you can see right behind me, there's significant damage from this weekend's storms. Right here, we're able to see just debris on the side of this road, you know, community members have come out, kind of help clean the area out. That way that people can come in. First responders, we did just see an electrical company come over here. We were told that people in this area are still without water. They're still without electricity. This is a fence that was knocked down. We were told that the water rose above a lot of mailboxes last night. We were told that, you know, people, first the water was coming from their ankles and then it went above them, and they had to leave the house and then climb on trees to get somebody to rescue them. Now right there we saw a fence got knocked down, and this person had cattle roaming in the area throughout the weekend, and we found out that another community member kind of volunteered to help them take care of their cattle until they were able to, you know, repair that fence. Right here, we're seeing this car. That's just one of the cars that's still intact. We're seeing on the creek, there's still, you know, a lot of cars, you know, just kind of entangled in all the debris. There's like railings also. The bridge shifted about a foot. And so, you know, it's tragic to see this community has gone through a lot. We're seeing houses got shifted from their foundation, moved over across the creek. People have lost a lot in this weekend storms. And we were told that, you know, the community members are, you know, seeking to help out, and the county judge is telling them, you know, right now we're kind of recovering. We want to make sure that we're able to find those missing people. Like you mentioned, you know, 10 people have died in our area. You know, about a dozen of people are still missing, and we're hoping today we're going to get an update to make sure that those people have been found. Reporting in Leander, I'm Jessica Rivera.
All right, Jessica, we appreciate you sharing what's going on there. It just affects all of the Texas Hill Country. We're going to continue to watch this developing situation for you and bring you the latest every second of the day. You can always find us on our Fox Local app, which is probably where you're watching now, or on our website, fox26houston.com. For now, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Camp Mystic and Hunt, ground zero for this flooding tragedy. Jonathan Mejia reports all the missing from the Christian camp did not survive.
We're outside of Camp Mystic with a tragic update. We've been on the ground since Friday evening, holding on to the hope that the campers that were at this camp were going to be found. We know that it is an all-girls Christian camp, and again, we were holding on to the hope with the families and with everyone tuning into this national story that the girls would be able to be found alive. But we received that tragic update. In a statement, Camp Mystic tells us that they are mourning the loss of all 27 girls and the camp counselors. Go ahead and take a look right across this riverbank here. You're going to take a look at what we are making out to be bedding. We are seeing colorful colors such as pinks, yellows, and blues. As we continue to pan toward the right, you're going to see that cabin. You see there's a yellow caution tape there. We're able to see inside that cabin, and it just goes to show how strong that flooding was, because it destroyed what was there. We're gonna come and look at what we're seeing on the ground here. Just debris, pileups of tree trunks, uprooted trees, and this is what we're seeing all along the camp out here. So in that statement, the camp goes on to say that they are grieving the loss of the 27 campers and counselors. Their hearts are broken alongside, quote, our families that are enduring this unimaginable tragedy. We are praying for them constantly. They go on to say, we are deeply grateful for the outpouring of support from community, first responders, and officials at every level. We ask for your continued prayers, respect, and privacy for each of our families affected. May the Lord continue to wrap his presence around all of us. We're expected to get an update from officials on what things are looking like in Kerr County, and that will be at 10 a.m. I'll be bringing you live debrief right after the presser. Again, we're expecting to see what the numbers are looking like and what the efforts are going on day 4. Reporting outside of Camp Mystic, Jonathan Mejia, Fox 26 News.
And we did hear from him right after that, and we found out that there are 75 victims confirmed in Kerr County. That was 48 adults, 27 children. And then the investigators there are still working to try to identify some of those victims, including 15 adults and 9 children that they have not been able to figure out who they are yet. So they're working on that, and then they will certainly be letting all the families know. Meantime, we're also hearing from the parents of some camp survivors. So this is the other side of it. Families who were so scared but were reunited with their children and grandchildren. In fact, one woman says 2 of her grandchildren were at Camp Mystic when it started flooding. One even had to wade through chest-high water with other campers to higher ground before being rescued.
And the water started coming into their cabin, and they told them to wait, that they were going to come get them, but then they couldn't get them. So the campers had to wade across the flats to the rec house, So it's so sad that something so wonderful can get so turned around, and yet it's Mother Nature, you know. Anyway, I pray for those families, and I hope they keep finding miracles and finding people, you know.